Hi there, I'm Matthew Lester from the Rhodes Business School in Grahamstown. On 22 October 2012, the legendary photographer Alf Kumalo died. That's a sad thing. He gave us many images of our country and contributed to a better understanding of the challenges that we're up against. Also on 22 October came the presentation of the SARS statistics for the 2012 fiscal year by the head of stats at SARS, Randall Carlson. They made for very interesting reading, and there's some brilliant images which demonstrate what we are up against in trying to get enough taxes together to feed our nation.
South Africa's taxes consist of personal income tax. There are 13.7 million individual taxpayers in South Africa, employed by 385,000 employers. 4.7 million are liable to submit a return, and 4.5 million have been assessed, contributing about 250 billion rand to the fiscus. That's represented in Chapter 2 of the SARS statistical report. Corporate income tax is represented by 2 million companies, of which about 791,000 are liable to submit a return and 407,000 have been assessed, contributing 152 billion rand to the fiscus. That's in Chapter 3 of the report. VAT is represented by 652,000 VAT vendors, 438,000 of which are active, and they are contributing a net 191 billion rand to the fiscus. And then the other major tax, of course, is customs and excise duties, and there are about 248,000 importers, and in net they have paid about 34 billion rand into the state coffers. They are represented in Chapter 5 of the report. There has been a strong recovery from the global credit crunch. We can see that there was a blip in 2009-2010 where the economy contracted. But the contraction in tax collections is not as major as the actual decline in economic growth. Overall, South Africa has managed to keep its tax to GDP ratios constant through the crisis, which is a major achievement. The only major downer has been corporate income tax to GDP ratios, which were most affected by the crisis, declining from 7.3% in 2008-2009 to 5.1% by 2012. One can ask the question, what is the cost of collecting taxes? They have been pretty stable at about 1% of the total revenue collected. This is a fantastic achievement by international norms. Many South Africans say that only the rich pay tax. Well, that's not true at all. 33.8% of South Africa's tax is paid by 6 million individuals who contribute by way of income tax. The remaining taxes, be they corporate tax, STCs, VAT, customs and excise duties, or all the other little ones, are paid by the entire population. Even the poorest of the poor on a child grant is paying VAT in some form or other during their daily lives. A very important message must go out that everybody needs to contribute if we are going to manage South Africa's deficit. Now we turn to personal income tax. There were about 5 million registered taxpayers in 2008. This number has now grown to 10 million because they have forced all people in formal employment to get a tax number. But importantly is the number of people liable to submit returns, and that number declines to about 4.8 million, of which for 2011, 4.5 have been assessed. That's a 94% assessment ratio, a fantastic achievement. The personal income tax register has increased to 13.7 million by 31 March 2012. But who pays the tax? This is where the misconception that only the rich pay tax comes in, because on personal income tax we have a big bunch, about 40% of the registered tax base, sitting in an area below 60,000 rands income per annum, and consequently the amount of tax that they are paying is very small. Then we get the middle working class, who account for about half the taxable income, but pay about 40% of the taxes. Then comes the frightening one. 10% of the individual taxpayers, accounting for nearly 40% of the taxable income, and paying a staggering 56% of the total individual tax collection. The average tax rate for individuals is 21% in South Africa, and 10% of individual taxpayers earn 37% of the income and pay 57% of personal income tax in South Africa. The statistics also show us that there is still an element of male domination in the workplace. A taxpayer earning 100,000 Rand in 1994-1995 had an effective tax rate of 33.8%. Growing with inflation, that income would have risen to about 300,000 Rand in today's terms. However, there has been a decline in the effective rate of tax to 17.8% on the 300,000 Rand today. That's an amazing achievement, but one must recognize that this is the case of a taxpayer who is receiving a cash-only package. The comparatives may be very different if one looks at the removal of travel allowances, the change in group life fringe benefits, and the change in the taxation of the medical aid fringe benefit. On corporate tax, we have had an increase in the number of registered companies to 2 million. However, currently only 791,000 are liable to submit returns. There are a tremendous number of dormant companies, non-existent companies, double registrations, etc., which still have to be sorted out. When one looks at corporate tax, we see a staggering trend of who pays the tax. In light blue on the graph are the numbers of companies with an assessed tax liability of greater than 100 million. By number, they are not even visible on the graph. However, by taxable income, they generate more than 50% of South Africa's taxable income and pay more than 50% of South Africa's tax. Then come the group of smaller companies, that's in the category of taxable income 1 million to 100 million, and they, in dark blue, represent the next big chunk. The smaller companies, indicated in brown, pink and grey, produce very little taxable income and very little tax, but there is a lot of administration that has to follow in order to collect this last little bit. The number of VAT vendors is declining. We see the numbers that have dropped from 745,000 to 652,000 registered VAT vendors. Only 438,000 of them are responsible for filing returns. This phenomenon is caused by the number of vendors who have simply been forced out of the system due to compliance requirements and a general cleanup of the VAT system. Again, when it comes to VAT vendors, we see that we have some striking statistics. Only 2% of VAT vendors have a turnover of greater than 100 million Rand a year. This accounts for 61% of domestic VAT payments and 76% of VAT refunds. But before those companies get too high and mighty about it, one must remember that as a VAT vendor, you are an agent for the public who is simply carrying over money from the consumer to SARS. On the customs and excise fronts, the statistics show a vast number of sources of information. Most interesting is that China is now our greatest trading partner, and on imports we see that a staggering 28 billion Rand a year, or 20.5% of the total import duty, is paid on imports from China.
Well, there's some of the pictures as presented by SARS. The stats are available on the SARS website, www.sars.gov.za, or the Treasury website, www.treasury.gov.za. Download them, they make interesting reading. And how about a project for people? Take those statistics, which are also available in Excel format, and see what pictures you can generate to show South Africa what we are up against in these difficult financial times. I'm Matthew Lester from the Rhodes Business School.